My name is Maya Whitfield. I'm 31 years old, and 4 months ago, I flew from Seattle to Boise, Idaho, to attend my younger sister's wedding. I'd booked the flight myself, packed a navy dress I'd had altered twice, and carried a gift I'd wrapped the night before in my hotel room. When I walked up to the entrance of Aspen Hollow Ranch, my own mother stepped in front of the door. "This is a private family event," she said. "You'll need to leave." I stood there holding a card with my niece's name on it, because in 6 months she'd technically be my niece, and I watched my mother's face for some flicker of hesitation. There wasn't one. She turned and walked back inside before I could say a single word. 3 days later, she called me. Not to apologize, she called about a bill, $38,000, and what I told her on that call is the reason I'm sharing this story with you tonight. But before I get into what happened, take a second to like this video and subscribe to The Quiet Reckoning, but only if you're actually enjoying it. And if you don't mind, drop the city you're listening from in the comments. I read every single one, and I'm always curious where this community is tuning in from. Now, let me take you back to last September, because none of this makes sense unless you understand how it started. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was in my apartment in Seattle when my phone lit up with a video call from my sister Jessica. She's 27, 4 years younger than me, and she's always had this particular gift for making a room feel like it revolved around her without ever seeming to try. I picked up and her face filled the screen, lit up in a way I hadn't seen since she got her acceptance letter to nursing school. "I'm engaged," she said, practically vibrating. Connor proposed at the Overlook on Table Rock. I started crying before she even finished the sentence. I was happy. I want to be clear about that, because this story isn't about me resenting her joy. I loved my sister. I'd helped raise her in a lot of ways, while our parents worked double shifts at the hardware store they used to own. I was the one who taught her to drive, who sat with her through her first heartbreak, who paid her rent for 4 months during a rough stretch in her early 20s without ever mentioning it again. Connor's family, the Hendersons, owned 3 car dealerships across the Treasure Valley. Nice people, from what little I knew of them. Connor himself seemed steady and genuinely kind. The kind of guy who remembered your name after meeting you once. My mother, Carol, leaned into the camera frame during that call. "Say hi to Maya, Jess," she said, and I caught the look on her face. It wasn't unkind exactly. It was careful, the way you look at something you're trying to manage. "Hi, honey, isn't this wonderful?" my mother said. "It really is," I said. "I'll start looking at flights. When's the date?" There was a pause, just half a second too long. "Oh, we'll figure all that out," my mother said. "Don't go spending money yet. It might end up being a smaller thing than we think." "It's Jessica's wedding, Mom." "I'm coming," I said. "We'll see how it shapes up," she said, and then she handed the phone back to my sister like the subject was closed. I want you to notice that moment, because I didn't, not really, not until much later. That was the first sign. I just filed it away as my mother being my mother, always a little anxious about money, always trying to control the shape of things before they happened. 2 weeks after that call, my mother called again. Except this time it wasn't Jessica. She wanted to talk about first. "Maya, I need to ask you something practical," she said. "The venue needs a credit card on file to hold the date. Your father and I, well, our credit's a little messy after we sold the hardware store, and Jessica just started her new job, so she doesn't have much history built up yet." I already knew where this was going before she finished the sentence. "It's 4 vendors total," she continued. "The venue, the caterer, the florist, the photographer. We just need someone with strong credit to sign as the responsible party." "You'd be doing your sister such a huge favor. How much are we talking about?" I asked. "All in, it comes to around $38,000. But you'd only need to put down a deposit now, about $4,500. The rest gets paid off as we go, closer to the date." 30, $8,000 under my name. Mom, that's a significant amount of money, I said. It's not really your money, sweetheart, she said. I mean, it's just your name on the paperwork. We'll handle the actual payments as they come due. I promise you, it'll be sorted before you even have to think about it. I'd heard a version of that promise before. When I was 23, I signed a car loan for my father after the store started struggling. It took me 2 years to untangle that from my credit report after he fell behind. When I was 27, I wired my mother $500 for what she called a roof emergency, which turned out months later to actually be the first semester of Jessica's nursing program. But this was my sister's wedding, and I was the older daughter, the one with the stable marketing director job in Seattle, the one with the 750 credit score, the one who always, eventually, said yes, send me the contracts, I told her. I signed every document that arrived over the following week without reading the fine print closely a second time. I trusted that this was simply what families do for each other, especially mine, especially for something as significant as a wedding. Over the following months, I watched the wedding take shape entirely from the outside. Jessica created a group text called Henderson Wedding Crew. I found out about its existence only because she forwarded me a message meant for that chat by mistake. A photo of bridesmaid dresses with the caption "Vote, ladies." I wasn't one of the ladies in that conversation. I called her twice to ask about the dress code, the seating chart, whether she wanted me to say a few words at the reception. The first time she said she'd get back to me. The second time the call went to voicemail and she texted an hour later. So busy with planning, talk soon. I called my mother to ask if there was anything I could help coordinate. Everything's under control, honey, she said. You really don't need to worry about a single thing. I never received a formal invitation. Not a printed one, not even a digital save. I told myself that was simply normal. You don't send your own sister a formal invitation. Family is automatically included. That's just understood. Then, about 3 weeks before the wedding, Jessica posted a photo from the rehearsal dinner at a restaurant downtown. Jessica in a cream-colored sundress, surrounded by her bridesmaids, my mother glowing beside her. The caption read, "My whole family, my whole heart." I stared at that photo for a long time. I wasn't in it. I hadn't been invited to the rehearsal dinner. I almost called to ask why, and then I talked myself out of it. Maybe the rehearsal was only for the official wedding party. Maybe they assumed I couldn't make it in early from Seattle. Maybe I was simply overthinking something small. I set my alarm for the flight 2 days before the ceremony. I'd requested time off work, 4 days in total, which used most of what I had left for the year. My round-trip ticket, Seattle to Boise, cost just under $600. The hotel, 3 nights at a place near downtown, came to $540. The gift, a custom kitchen, set Jessica had mentioned wanting during an offhand comment months earlier, came to $310. Total out-of-pocket, before I'd even left Washington State, was just over $1,400, separate entirely from the $38,000 already sitting under my name with 4 different vendors. On the flight, I drafted a short toast on my phone. Something light about the time Jessica made me play wedding with her stuffed animals when she was 6, always casting me as the efficient, never the bride. I thought people would find it funny. I practiced the wording twice under my breath, quiet enough that the woman in the seat next to me wouldn't think I'd completely lost it. When I landed, I texted my mother, "Just landed, can't wait to see everyone tomorrow." No response for almost an hour. Then, right as I was getting into my rental car, a single message came through. "Okay, see you there." No exclamation point, no mention of being excited, 5 words total. I checked into my hotel that night and told myself everything would feel normal once I actually arrived at the venue the next day. I should have paid closer attention to those 5 words. The morning of the wedding, I dressed carefully in the navy dress I'd had altered, gathered the gift, and drove the 20 minutes out to Aspen Hollow Ranch, a converted barn venue surrounded by cottonwood trees just outside the city. The parking lot was already filling with cars, some of which I recognized from childhood, neighbors, old family friends, people who'd watched both Jessica and me grow up. I walked toward the entrance, gift in hand, and that's when I saw my mother standing just inside the doorway, talking with a tall woman in a pale blue dress I didn't recognize. As I approached, my mother's expression shifted into something I'd never seen directed at me before. Not anger exactly, something colder. "This is a private family event," she said, stepping fully into the doorway. "You'll need to leave, Mom. It's me," I said, genuinely confused for a second, as if she might not have recognized me. "I know who you are," she said, her voice flat and quiet enough that only the 2 of us and the woman beside her could hear it clearly. "This is for family only." The woman in the pale blue dress looked between us, visibly uncomfortable. "And this is?" she asked, gesturing toward me. "A distant cousin," my mother said, without missing a beat. We weren't able to fit everyone. I stood there in the dress I'd picked out 2 months earlier, holding a gift I'd wrapped the night before, and watched my mother's face show absolutely nothing. No guilt, no hesitation, just a closing door, both literally and otherwise. She turned and walked back inside, and the heavy barn door swung shut behind her, leaving me standing in the gravel parking lot in front of 2 valet attendants who suddenly found something very interesting to look at on the ground. I didn't cause a scene. I want to be honest with you about that, because I know some of you might expect me to have pounded on that door, demanding to be let in. I didn't. I walked back to my rental car, sat down in the driver's seat, and simply stared straight ahead for what felt like a long time, but was probably closer to 10 minutes. Then I drove back to my hotel. I changed out of the navy dress, hung it carefully in the closet for no reason I could explain, and sat down on the edge of the bed with my laptop. I told myself I needed a distraction, something practical to focus on instead of the hollow feeling sitting in my chest. So I opened my email and started going through the vendor confirmations, just to see exactly what I'd actually signed months earlier. Every contract followed the same structure: deposit paid up front, remaining balance due after the event. Total deposits I'd already paid across the 4 vendors came to $4,500. Total outstanding balance, due within 5 days of the wedding date, was $33,500. Combined with what I'd already paid, the full cost of that wedding, sitting under my name, was $38,000 exactly. I closed the laptop and sat very still. Somewhere 20 minutes away, the reception was probably starting. Toasts being raised, my mother laughing with relatives, my sister dancing with her new husband under string lights I'd technically paid the deposit on. All of it happening under contracts signed by someone they'd just told a stranger was a distant cousin. My phone rang at 9:45 that night. The screen read Aunt Denise, my mother's older sister, a retired pharmacist who has never once apologized for saying exactly what she thinks. "Maya, where are you? I didn't see you at the reception," she said. "I was there, Aunt Denise. I just never made it past the front door." "What do you mean you never made it inside?" I told her everything: the doorway, the phrase private family event, the words distant cousin, the valet attendants who wouldn't look at me. There was a long silence on the line, long enough that I could hear her breathing slow and deliberate on the other end. "She told someone you were a cousin." Her voice had gone flat in a way I recognized immediately, because it's exactly how my mother sounds right before she decides how angry she's allowed to be. "That's what she said," I told her. "Lord have mercy," Aunt Denise said. "Maya, listen to me. During the toast tonight, your mother stood up and said, and I'm quoting her directly, 'Our family Richard, myself, and our Jessica. That's how she introduced you all to the Hendersons. I sat there thinking something felt off, and now I understand exactly what it was. It's not your fault, I told her. No, it's not, she said. It's Carol's, and she's going to hear about it from me directly. Then her voice shifted, still angry, but with something sharper underneath it now. Something that sounded almost strategic. Maya, those vendor contracts, whose name is actually on them. Mine, I said. All four of them under your name, she repeated slowly. All four, I confirmed. She went quiet again, and when she spoke next, there was something almost protective in her tone. Then you listen to me, sweetheart. Your mother just told a room full of people you don't exist in this family. You do not owe that room 1 single cent. The next morning, a Sunday, I woke up to a notification on Instagram. Jessica had posted a full gallery from the wedding, 14 photos in total. The first was the two of them at the altar, Jessica in lace, Connor in a charcoal suit, golden light pouring through the barn windows behind them. The second was a formal family portrait, my mother, my father, Jessica, Connor, and Connor's parents. 5 people, 2 families joined together, one family conspicuously short a daughter. The caption read, "Surrounded by everyone who matters most." I read it 3 times. Then I opened my email, where the venue's invoice had already landed overnight, automated and cheerful, with a small illustration of a barn in the header. Thank you for choosing Aspen Hollow Ranch. Your remaining balance of $14,200 is due within 5 business days. Below it sat invoices from the caterer, the florist, and the photographer, each time-stamped from the previous evening, each addressed to me by name, each carrying its own 5-day deadline. $38,000, due within the week. I looked again at the caption beneath that family portrait. Everyone who matters most. Then I looked back at the invoices sitting in my inbox. Something shifted inside me in that moment, and I want to describe it accurately because it wasn't a sudden burst of rage. It was quieter than that. It felt like a lock turning somewhere deep inside, a door that had been stuck for years finally clicking open on its own. I wasn't angry yet. I knew the anger would come later, probably in waves, probably at inconvenient moments over the following weeks. Right then, sitting in that hotel room on a Sunday morning, what I actually felt was clarity. I had been the only person who financially built that wedding. I was the only person missing from every photograph, and I was the only person now receiving invoices for a celebration I had been physically turned away from. Something had to change, and for the first time in my adult life, I decided it wasn't going to be me bending to absorb it. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from Jessica. Not a call. She hadn't actually tried to speak with me. She'd simply left a message, almost like checking a box on a list. I pressed play. Hey Maya, so the wedding was honestly perfect, like genuinely perfect. The barn looked incredible, and Connor's parents were so sweet about everything. Anyway, sorry things got kind of awkward yesterday. Mom said it was just easier this way, and honestly, I think she might have been right. It would have been a lot to explain to everyone. But I really did want to say thank you for handling all the vendor stuff. Seriously, you're the best big sister. Let's catch up soon, okay? Love you. I listened to it twice. Sorry things got kind of awkward. Not, I'm sorry Mom turned you away at the door. Not, I should have stood up for you. Not, I had no idea. I would have fought for you to be there. Just, Mom said it was easier this way. She knew. She'd known before the ceremony that our mother intended to turn me away, and she had quietly accepted it as the path of least resistance. And then, that final line, "You're the best big sister." I used to genuinely love hearing those words. They used to make every sacrifice feel meaningful. Sitting in that hotel room, though, I heard the phrase differently for what felt like the first time. She only calls me that when she needs something from me. I had 5 days to decide who I was going to choose to be. That Sunday night, I sat cross, legged on the hotel bed with my laptop open, and typed a question into the search bar. Am I legally responsible for vendor contracts I signed on behalf of someone else's event? The answers were consistent across every source. The person whose name appears on a contract holds the legal financial obligation, but that same person also holds the legal authority. I could authorize the remaining payments. I could decline to authorize them. I could formally redirect every outstanding invoice to the individuals who had actually received the services. I picked up my phone and called the venue first. It rang twice before someone answered. Aspen Hollow Ranch, this is Megan, the voice said. Hi, Megan. My name is Maya Whitfield. I'm the contract holder of record for the Henderson wedding this past Saturday. Oh, yes, Ms. Whitfield. What a beautiful event. How can I help you? I need to inform you that I will not be authorizing the final payment on this contract. I was not present at the event, and I'm formally requesting that the remaining balance be redirected to the actual hosts of the celebration. There was a pause on the other end. Okay, I'll need to pass this along to our manager, she said carefully. Can I ask, is there some kind of dispute? There's no dispute, I said. I'm simply declining to authorize the charge. The remaining invoice should go to the Whitfield and Henderson families directly in Boise. She confirmed my email, said someone would follow up the next business day. I hung up and called the caterer next. Same calm tone, same clear request, same outcome. Then the florist. Then the photographer. 4 calls in total, 11 minutes start to finish. I never raised my voice. I never explained the backstory to any of them. I simply repeated one word calmly and firmly, as many times as necessary, no. When I finished, I closed my laptop, brushed my teeth, and slept through an entire night for the first time since landing in Idaho. Monday morning, I changed my return flight and left 2 days earlier than originally planned. I packed in under 15 minutes, checked out before sunrise, and drove the 20 minutes to the airport one final time through familiar streets I'd grown up on. I didn't stop anywhere along the way. I didn't look back toward the house I'd grown up in. When I was 12 years old, my mother once told me, Maya, you're the oldest. You have to be the strong one for your sister. I had been strong for 19 years straight after that conversation. Strong through Jessica's difficult adolescence. Strong through every financial emergency that turned out to be a quiet cover story for something else entirely. Strong through every holiday I spent alone in Seattle, telling myself the distance, and not anything deeper, was the actual reason. 2 days later, sitting at my desk during a lunch break, my phone rang, my mother's name on the screen. I let it ring 3 full times before answering. Maya, hi, sweetheart, she said. Her voice light and warm in a way I recognized immediately as the voice she uses specifically when she needs something. How are you settling back in? Fine, I said. Good, listen. I just got the strangest call from the venue. They're saying you removed your payment authorization. The remaining balance is $33,000. How do we want to handle this? We don't handle it, Mom, I said. You handle it. There was a long silence. Maya, that's not fair, she said, her voice shifting now, sharper. You signed those contracts. You agreed to this. I agreed to help my sister get married, I said. I didn't agree to fund a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. That's not what this is about, she said. We can talk about the door situation separately. Right now, we have actual vendors expecting payment. I genuinely don't think we're going to see this the same way, I said. The balance is now the Hendersons' and Jessica's responsibility, along with yours and Dad's. I've already redirected every invoice. I won't be reauthorizing anything. You're being incredibly vindictive right now, she said, her voice rising. I'm being accurate, I said. I'm not in any photographs. I'm not in any group chat. I was told at the door that I was a distant cousin. I'm simply making sure my name isn't on $8,000 for an event I was formally excluded from. She hung up without saying another word. Over the following 2 weeks, the full picture of what had actually happened slowly reached me through Aunt Denise, who called every few days with updates I hadn't asked for but was grateful to receive anyway. My mother had apparently planned the exclusion for months, worried that my presence might somehow raise uncomfortable questions with the Hendersons about an old, distorted family story she'd told them, one in which she and my father had supposedly raised only one daughter. I still don't fully understand the specific motivation behind that particular lie, and honestly, at this point, I've stopped trying to. What I do know is this. My mother called Aunt Denise screaming that she'd ruined everything by telling me about the toast. I didn't ruin anything, Carol, Aunt Denise told her. I just stopped covering for you. My mother hung up on her too, and added her to a growing list of relatives she apparently stopped speaking to that month. About 2 weeks after the wedding, I received a long, rambling text message from Jessica. I could practically hear her crying while she typed it. Maya, I'm so sorry about everything, it read. It got so out of control, and I swear I didn't know Mom was actually going to turn you away at the door. Connor is furious with me, and his parents barely look at me now. The vendor balance is causing real problems, and we're already behind on our apartment deposit too. I know this is asking a lot, but is there any way you could cover even part of it? I'll pay you back, I promise. You're my sister and I love you, and I really need help right now. I read it once at my desk during lunch. Then a second time. Then a third time, specifically searching for one particular sentence that simply wasn't there. An acknowledgement that what happened to me at that door had been wrong. A line that said, I should have fought for you to be there. It never appeared anywhere in the message. The entire text revolved around her problems, Connor's anger, the apartment deposit, the strained relationship with his parents. My own experience standing in that gravel parking lot wasn't mentioned once. It was an apology for the financial mess, not for the actual wound underneath it. There's a real difference between those two things. I typed back carefully. Jess, I'm genuinely sorry you're dealing with all of this, and I mean that. But I can't help financially right now. This was never about the money for me. It was about being treated like real family, not the kind that disappears the moment it becomes inconvenient. When you're ready to talk about that, I'm here. She never responded, not that day, not that week. I wasn't particularly surprised. She'd never quite known what to do with me, whenever I wasn't actively useful to her in some way. About a month after the wedding, I received an email from my father, which on its own was unusual enough to make me sit up straighter at my desk. My father doesn't email. He calls occasionally, and when he does, the conversation usually revolves around weather or the local high school football scores. In 31 years, he had never written me anything longer than a birthday card. Maya, the email read. I should have said something that day at the barn. I didn't. I stood there next to your mother while she handled it, and I never opened my mouth. I don't have a good excuse for that. I was a coward, plain and simple. Your mother and I are working through things with the vendors on our end now. We don't need your money for it. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. I should have walked you in myself. I read it 5 times that day, once at my desk, once on the bus home, once more sitting alone in my apartment with the lights off. It wasn't a perfect message. It didn't fix anything that had happened, and it certainly didn't confront my mother directly or demand any kind of real accountability from her. But it was honest, and it was the first genuinely honest thing anyone in my family had said to me since the whole situation began. I waited a week before writing back. Dad, thank you. That actually means more than you probably realize. I'm not ready to come home yet, or pretend everything's fine between us. But I read your email, and I'll keep reading it. He never wrote back after that, and I didn't particularly expect him to. He'd said what he needed to say, and I'd heard it clearly. 4 months have now passed since that morning outside Aspen Hollow Ranch. I was promoted at work 2 months ago, senior marketing director at the firm I've been with for 5 years. My manager specifically cited composure under pressure in my review. She has no idea how literally accurate that description actually is. I started seeing a therapist as well, not specifically because of the wedding itself, but because of the 31 years that came before it. We've spent a lot of sessions unpacking something she calls functional over-responsibility, this underlying belief that if I simply perform well enough, sacrifice enough, and quietly carry enough weight, the people I love will eventually, finally, truly see me. That belief was the engine behind every check I'd ever written, every flight I'd ever booked, every single time I said I'm fine when what I actually meant was this is hurting me. I speak with Aunt Denise most weekends now. She keeps me updated on things back in Boise, not out of any desire to gossip, but so I'm never blindsided by news secondhand. My parents have apparently paid off about $9,000 of the remaining $3,000 themselves, dipping into retirement savings to do it. The rest sits on a personal loan that Jessica and Connor took out together, and according to Aunt Denise, the monthly payments have become a quiet but constant source of tension inside their new household. Connor's parents remain polite, but noticeably distant. Jessica and Connor are still married, currently in couples counseling, working through what Aunt Denise describes as a foundation that cracked on day one. My mother has not called, texted, or emailed me since that conversation about the invoice. Aunt Denise tells me she refers to the entire situation, when it comes up at all, as Maya's little tantrum. I imagine that framing is simply easier for her to live with than the alternative. I don't hate my mother. I've spent a fair number of therapy sessions making absolutely sure of that, but I've stopped pretending that her particular version of love never actually hurt me. It did repeatedly for years, and pretending otherwise was slowly wearing something down inside me, one signed contract at a time. I'm not sharing this story so that you'll hate her either. She's flawed in specific, human ways. She's anxious and image-conscious, and she built a particular version of our family that felt presentable to people like the Hendersons, because somewhere along the way, the real version of our family stopped feeling like enough to her. I became the piece that quietly didn't fit inside that carefully constructed frame. That's not an excuse for what happened. It's simply what happened. And I think a meaningful part of growing up is eventually accepting that the people who raised you are also just people, stumbling through their own fears and limitations, sometimes at your direct expense. But I am telling you this story because some of you watching right now might be living a version of it yourselves. Maybe you're the one who books the flight, who signs the paperwork, who absorbs the silence and quietly calls it love simply because you don't know what else to call it. I did that for a very long time. I called it duty. I called it being the responsible one. And every single time I wrote a check, or swallowed an insult, or pretended an empty seat at some table didn't bother me, I lost a small piece of myself in the process. A boundary isn't punishment, it isn't revenge, and it certainly isn't a weapon. A boundary is simply the moment you finally say, I'm worth more than this arrangement, and then you actually act accordingly. $38,000. That's what my freedom from that particular pattern ultimately cost, and I genuinely don't regret a single dollar of it that I declined to pay. If you're the one who always pays, whether that's emotionally, financially, or otherwise, for a seat at a table that was honestly never built with you in mind, maybe it's time to consider building your own table instead, and sitting comfortably at the head of it. I didn't lose my family that morning outside Aspen Hollow Ranch. I found myself instead, and looking back now, she was absolutely worth the wait. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this one. It genuinely means a great deal. I want to ask you directly, if you'd been in my position that morning, would you have eventually paid that $38,000, or would you have drawn the same line I did? Drop pay or boundary in the comments below. I read every single one of them. If something in this story touched a real nerve for you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to The Quiet Reckoning. I share stories like this one every week about family, about boundaries, and about finding your voice when the people closest to you try quietly to take it away. And if you'd like to hear another story along these same lines, check the description below for one I think you'll genuinely connect with. I'll see you in the next one.